From the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verses 13 through 16. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." In this passage from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, Jesus asks his disciples two pointed questions. In the first hand, he asks, "Who do the people say that I am?" In the second, "Who do you say that I am?" The "you," by the way, in this case is "you" plural, since he was speaking to the disciples collectively. But only Peter answered it. And later we come to learn from a little detail of how Peter's name gets changed from Simon Bar-Jonah to Peter the Rock. Who do people say that I am? In a somewhat cheeky pondering, I sometimes wonder what would have happened to Christianity if the disciples had conducted a Gallup poll, a survey, to see just how many voted for whom. Who do they say that I am? Was it a split of 60-20-20? 60-40-0? Who would have won if it had been a kind of an election or a choice? What if an overwhelming majority of them said that Jesus was the return of John the Baptist, or Elijah, or Jeremiah, or one of a host of other prophets? Would Christianity look anything remotely like the Christianity we have today? What would have become of Jesus? Would his death on a cross be recorded as just another Roman execution of a common criminal? What would Jesus have done if he had this moment? Would he have founded a church? And who, if at all, would the followers of Jesus be in the world today? It's somewhat far from our lived experience, but how the crowd and the disciples answered Jesus' two questions would become the litmus test from the powers that be about what it means to be a Christian. Who do you say that I am? In darker times, the way a person would answer the question of who Jesus was could easily have determined whether they would live or die. I'm mindful of the great schism of the East and the West in 1054 over a debate, in part over the simple debate over the filioque in the Nicene Creed. Did the Spirit of God proceed from the Father only, or the Father and the Son? Where the Latin Church decreed that it's from the Father and the Son, the Eastern Church said, no, from the Father only, the Spirit was sent. It's hard for us to imagine today, but as much blood as ink were spilled over that one question. I remember reading in church history of how monasteries, monks with swords and with clubs would attack one another, one monastery to another. How dare you, heretics, and kill one another over the filioque, the Father and the Son, sending the Holy Spirit. I'm mindful too of the many religious wars, and sadly, how the lived experience of most of us here in this church today, in our own divided society, have experienced Jesus in that context. At the risk of sounding smug, and perhaps even derisive, today we might say about the filioque and our local sectarian divide, much ado about very little. Much ado about very little. And it is, in so many ways. Thank goodness we live in a more enlightened and plural society where we can express our views openly and debate them freely without fear of persecution. I'm mindful in this building, and I'd love to come to church early. I usually get here about a half hour earlier to sit quietly and to pray. And it never, perhaps I'm more Americanized than I think, but there are no buildings this old in the United States. And you just sit here thinking, oh, it's just another day on Sunday at church. But for me, the walls are dripping with history. I can feel in my spirit the prayers of people who sat in those pews year in and year out, one generation after the next, and how they debated and discussed and worshiped God using these same questions and in this same forum. And we're part of that journey, part of that expressed and lived experience as Christians. This very church is a beautiful temple. And is a beautiful temple not only in its construction, but a beautiful temple to the free and open exploration of who Jesus is and how our belief in his nature informs both our consciences and how we live his teachings. If I claim he is fully human and fully God, and you say that although he is exalted in his humanity, divinized, and above all the angels, he is not God, should I attack you? Should you attack me? Would blood be spilled? In the past, it certainly was. But we have agreed in a place like this, and this is a rarity in the Christian world in that sense. It's a rarity that we have agreed together that we hold a space or a place in the conscience which is sacrosanct and sacred, so that we can hold in tension those same ideas without forcing one creedal belief over another onto someone else. Indeed, if I had a goal for this morning's reflection, it would be simply to explore who Jesus is from the perspective of first the Bible,